G'day, I'm back with another cadaver. Initial observations on this one. Very first thing I can see is these heels are extremely underrun. So by underrun, I mean they're underrun. They're running under. Instead of this heel standing up square, supporting the back half of this foot, it's bending itself under. The weight bearing structure is now behind the heel as opposed to the end of the heel, and look, it's actually causing a great big split in the heel bulb itself. So you know, that would have been very tender for a horse, probably bleeding, because it split the soft tissue in the heel bulb itself. So when we look underneath at that heel, we can see how far forwards it's reaching. So this whole foot's going forwards. We can see that the actual tubules over the hoof tissue itself, the hoof wall tissue, is bending this way. Hoof tubules start there, and then they come all the way forwards like this, whereas they should be growing down like that, you know, more towards the ground. Another split just here, we can see. Horse has either kicked itself, stood on itself, or injured itself, or there's some damage somewhere in here which has caused an abscess to blow out in the softer tissue up at the coronet there. So other observations. Again, extremely overgrown hoof. You know, we've got all that depth of hoof wall, you know, a centimetre or two, 1.5 centimetres worth of hoof wall overgrown there. Got a big hoof wall that's chipped away here. As this hoof wall's growing, one side wants to go that way, one side wants to go the other, and we've got this crack just here that's obviously got a load of grass and things trapped in it. If this horse was looked after, it would have really reasonably well conformed feet. There's not a huge amount of old tissue developed on the sole. It's got quite a nice depth and concavity to it, which is fantastic. Frog's degenerated around here. Got a big flap of old dead frog there. But in terms of, you know, balance, this side's as long as this side is. We've not got a big flare flapping out this way or flapping out that way. Heels, and you know, this just needs a good trim, and this foot will be in really reasonable shape. The extent of this crack we don't know until we've trimmed it, but look at all this. It looks rough. This looks like the roughest cadaver we've done from an aesthetic sort of superficial perspective. But once all that length's been taken off and trimmed back to where it should be, you'll be surprised how nice this foot's going to turn out. So let's get into it. One thing that's worth noting at this point in the video, how horses would maintain their feet by themselves in a wild situation. Well, for one, horses do live in seasonally wet, dry climates. That's where, and the cold climates. So if you think of Siberian tundra, Mongolia, big open rolling grasslands at quite high altitude where it gets very cold, so there's very little moisture in the air and in the ground for 6 to 8 months of the year. Then they'll have a downpour, a wet season. So a horse's hoof would have 8 months of very dry conditions, then a 4-month wet season. So the hoof would harden up, callus up, be moving across abrasive terrain. It'd be wearing down because a horse would travel, you know, anything from 15 to 50 kilometers to and from water, out to where they graze, back towards where they drink, multiple times a day. The feet would get nice and hard during most of the year. Then they'd be exposed to moisture. The feet would soften up, and then they'd break and chip like this as they were walking. They'd wear themselves down. They'd get all rounded and smoothed off, and and then it'd start to dry up again. So you'd never, horses typically don't come from temperate climates or tropical climates where there's a humidity and a moisture all year round, but in a domestic situation we bring horses, and we have bred horses in climates where they don't naturally exist. You know, I'm here in New Zealand, no horses, very temperate, subtropical, lots of fungus, lots of bacteria, annual rainfall, very high moisture in the ground, on the ground all the time. Doesn't matter how much sun we get, walk out in the morning, your feet are wet, it's just lots of morning dew. This would be the same in like England, Scotland, coastal parts of America, you know, southern Australia where the rainfall's higher, Queensland, northern Australia, a lot drier. So this is how they would maintain their feet in the wild. They'd walk long distances, they would live in dry conditions with seasonal wet seasons, then they'd break off like this to the level of the sole, and then they'd start the process of callousing and hardening up again. So that's that. So like in other videos on these cadavers, this horse doesn't have hugely overgrown bars. They don't go right out here and aren't laying over. They're just overgrown in a normal sort of way. So I'll just take that bit off there. I'll just take this bit off here. I really want to get rid of that flap of frog. This foot's probably harder than this horse ever had in its entire life, because I've had this foot now for a few days, and it's thawed out and been out in the sun drying. It's not touched the ground or had any moisture on it, so to be honest, this is as hard as this foot has ever been. I can guarantee that. Just clean up this collateral groove. We do that so that it doesn't traps as little dirt as possible, keeps this area as dry and as clean as possible. That's all we can do with the frog, because it's as short as it needs to go. Okay, just expose the tip of this frog. Lovely. Excellent. So just put a mark around the white line. This helps give me a guide to where I'll do my initial trim. Here we need to leave a little bit of hoof wall proud of the sole. If horses are walking on their soles completely, then get pretty sore pretty quick. They need a little bit of elevation in the hoof wall. So just mark that up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my nippers nice and flat. I'm just going to trim just above that black line. Take these heels down that are under running. Sometimes, you know, when you're starting out, when you're learning, when you're doing all these things, you don't have to take them short. Just, you can always trim them a bit shorter if you want to, but trim them short the first time and you got a lame horse, you can't exactly put hoof on, you've got to wait for it to grow. So might as well leave it on, take a little bit more off tomorrow if you really feel like you've not done a thorough enough job. Underrun heel. Cool. Check that we're balanced up. Check one heel isn't higher than the other. Pretty good job there. And that's that. I'm just going to run the rasp over and smooth things off. Take the jagged bits off around the front there, around the edges. Voila. So you can already see now our heels have got this kink in them because we've brought the heel back. So, you know, before the heel used to go up to a point here. Now we've brought it back by about 1 centimetre. The heel originally was going in that line, and the heel was ended up there. Now it's way back here, in line with the widest part of the frog, which is ideal. So what we want to do is we want to trim these bars, take them back in that straight line. Just take this point off. Excellent. Okay, so I think we'll map this foot up, eh? So, already sort of marked our heels at a decent height there. We'll mark the tip of our frog. We'll draw a line straight down the center of the foot, through the tip of the frog, through the central sulcus. Central sulcus is this depression here, and it's excessively depressed because it's kind of rotted out a bit. I do want to tidy that little bit of frog up there, and this bit here. So you want to find the widest part of our foot, which is there. Again, that does sort of synchronize with the ends of our bars, which is very common. Probably a fraction further forward in terms of the widest part there. I feel I drew that a little bit too far back. But anyway, these are guides. Remember, these are guides, they're reference points. They're not, you know, ideals. We're not trying to carve a foot into what we consider ideal. We're working with the foot and each individual foot to get a better proportion. So I've just done an extra line there across the tip of the frog. I'm going to move my level forwards until I hit the white line, and I'm going to draw a line across where it meets, the hoof wall meets the sole, which is what we call the white line. I'm going to go from where this breakover line meets the white line to our point there at the widest part of the frog, the same on this side. And like I said before in all my other videos with these cadavers and all the ones I'm going to do in the future on horses that are still kicking, these are guides, these are reference points, you know. I'm not making a mathematical diagram on the bottom of the foot where I'm trimming exact to the millimeter, but it gives me an idea, and it helps you train your eye, especially when you first start looking and studying hooves. It gives you an idea of proportion, you know. So this is a very well proportioned horse. Everything's very well proportioned in my opinion, from my perspective. So I'm going to actually create a steeper break over there. I'm just going to rasp this toe with an angle of 2 fingers at the back, roughly. You know, again, you don't have to be to the millimeter, but this line across here gives a guide. Once we touch that line, we know we need to stop. We don't need to go any further. See? That's as far as we need to go. We're exposing this bit of damage here, this bit of a crack. Apart from that, I am really quite happy with that trim. I wouldn't mind just bringing the heels back a fraction more. Just use the rougher side, get a grip of it. Take them edges off. And we'll look at whether we're balanced or not. Beautiful. One side's not sticking up there, one side's not sticking up there. And from the side, you can already see now, look. Heel's not standing upright as much. It's still under running, but we've brought the bearing weight surface back here. And over time, with regular trimming, this heel would relax and straighten up a bit. And we can do various things with shoeing to help wedge this back up and give it more support with shoes or whatever, so it doesn't wear and crush down as much, but not too bad. And you can already see, just with that trim, there's a few little jagged chips here. Look how unbelievably good that looks in comparison to what it started out like. If I was to finish this horse off, I'd bring it forward, put it on the hoof stand, and tidy all this up. But in this case, you know, with it being a cadaver, I'm not going to do so. I'm going to leave it as is. And on this foot, that's a wrap. Thanks for watching.